Greetings. I'm Lisa White from the University of California at Berkeley. I'm also the chair of the AGU Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee. And on behalf of the working group that organized this workshop, we want to say again, we appreciate your time. We know there are a lot of demands on your schedule, especially this time in the academic year for those at academic institutions. But it seems appropriate that we have an opportunity before the academic year ends to reflect on progress and lessons learned in this very eventful past year. If we could go to the next slide, the plan for our next couple of hours is we're going to make sure we're interactive and give you a chance to share who you are and also reflect on some of the questions that we'll share later. But we've invited a number of panelists who have been extremely active over the past year and actually throughout their careers in really promoting more diverse, inclusive, and equitable opportunities in the geosciences. And we wanted especially for you to hear from some newer groups that have formed, and we're really excited to have members of the Asian American and Pacific Islander in Geosciences, a brand new group. And it'll be a nice way to really share ways to support not only them and their initiatives, but provide perspective on how much with all that continues to happen that often divides our communities, there is so much richness, talent, and dedication to what we do, that we want this space to be one where we can be honest and forthcoming about some of the challenges that we've faced individually, and then the ongoing and I think collective barriers that we know exist at our institutions. So we'll make time for a whole variety of different kinds of conversations, and certainly using breakout rooms will help us with that. And we'll welcome your feedback along the way. If I can have the next slide, I wanted to, before I introduce the panelists, just remind this group that this is the fourth in a series that we initiated during the Geological Society of America meeting last October. So we've been fortunate along the way at partnering with other professional geoscience societies, and you'll notice some of those, their logos and media sponsors in the advertising materials. But it was really important, we thought, as we've taken this journey together, to collaborate as much as possible, use the virtual venues of the annual meetings of our professional societies to hear from really all of you. And we thank those of you who participated in more than one workshop. And so, especially in the October workshop of last year, we thought it necessary to call attention to some of the petitions that grew out of the anti-racism efforts and No Time for Silence, and we'll get perspectives on some of the leadership from that group. We know that whatever we do, much of it does need to feed back in positive ways on efforts in academic environments to diversify faculty, to better educate students. So that was an important highlight in workshop 2 that was held during the AGU virtual meeting week. And then we were also fortunate in January of this year to meet during the American Meteorological Society annual meeting and hear from the students that we know will are both our current leaders and our future leaders in this effort, and they continue to inspire us in this work. And so we've invited folks that have been active in those workshops, that have helped us along this journey, that have led various movements to start us off. And so we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. And we'll first get a bit more information from you before we start in. And we'll have a couple of quick polls that we will ask you to answer. So we'll go to the polls next. Okay, so you can click as many boxes here that in which you identify and go ahead and submit. Okay, and then give people time, but in another minute, we'll add another poll so we know who's here with us today.
Lisa, I'm not sure whether we want to share the results after each question or at the end, whichever is easiest for you.
Yeah, whatever easiest for.
I can do it now. I'll show you all.
Okay.
You all see that?
Yes.
Mhm. Okay. Great. All right, so let's go to the next poll. All right, Priel, and let us know when a significant number of participants have answered that poll. And if you could share it with us. Okay. All right, great. Well, I must say for our community, that's a pretty darn good distribution of participants as it relates to race and ethnicity. Okay, now I might need to be reminded, do we have a third poll? Okay, all right, here we go. Okay. Great. Okay. So again, a nice distribution, good percentage of faculty, as would be expected, students and postdocs, great. Yep, mid-career folks are representing, but it's a nice distribution. So thank you for that. Okay. Well, good to know. We are all right. Well, with the next slide, we want to hear from members of our community. And so with each member, they'll likely share a slide or image. So I'm sure they're prepared to do some screen sharing. So first, I will invite Aradhana Tripathi from UCLA to provide comments and reflections.
Thank you. And let me see if I can share my screen. Great. There we go. Can everybody see this? All right, terrific. So thank you for being here, and thanks to the organizers for giving me a few minutes to speak. We know that in response to the ongoing white supremacist acts of anti-Black and anti-people of color violence last summer, with the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, there have been even more intense calls for transformation across society, from divesting from the police in our communities to on our campuses, and for reinvestment, more investment in Black and Indigenous and people of color communities. A lot of the organizing that has happened has been in higher education spaces. And as a geoscientist and as the director of the Center for Diverse Leadership in Science, we decided to move forward with doing a anti-racism letters analysis from higher education spaces. And specifically, these are demands for transformative change from students, from staff, from faculty, from Black members of these communities and their allies. This is analysis that was done by some of our staff members, predominantly by Ray Spriggs, who's here. And to date, we have about 60 letters of which half have been completed. Now, this really represents a roadmap for transformation, for action planning, based on what people saw locally in their own campuses. But what's remarkable about it is that common themes emerge. And perhaps this is not so remarkable when we think more deeply about the history of higher education in this country. With that, I want to highlight some of the primary themes that emerged. 80% of the demand letters called for institutional legal policy and advocacy work for Black, Indigenous, and POC peoples. This includes changing reporting procedures for people who have experienced discrimination and racism on campuses, how we actually respond to these types of events, and also cutting institutional ties with local and/or campus police departments. Over 70% of the letters called for a public stance to be taken around anti-racism and DEI efforts, what their shared values are, including things like renaming buildings that are named after slave owners, eugenicists, racists, sexists, homophobes, and xenophobes, to releasing action plans as well as public statements in solidarity. Over 70% of the letters called for organizational commitment to change through structural changes. Examples include looking at policies and changing policies around hiring committees and other decision-making bodies to include representation of groups that are typically disempowered. For example, students, underrepresented faculty, looking at eliminating the requirement for standardized testing scores for new applicants, looking at rubrics associated with hiring and promotion processes. It's just a few examples. Almost 70% of the demand letters called for institutional efforts to diversify faculty in campus leadership. So hiring faculty at all levels. In addition, demand letters, in addition to demanding institutional change, over 60% of the demand letters called for wide-scale evidence of personal commitment to change from faculty. And this includes not just learning about the experiences of BIPOC peoples, but also actively working to undo harm, undo biases, microaggressive and macroaggressive behaviors, to equity trainings and practices, including for executive administrators, faculty, staff, and students. And then over 60% of letters called for fellowships dedicated to, investments dedicated to BIPOC students. Now, there are a series of other demands that are part of this, and we'll be circulating this to the workshop registrants. But I really want to highlight that these are themes that are coming out again and again and again, and these are really themes that we should be amplifying in our discussions at department level and at university level in the institutions we're part of. Thank you.
Thank you, Aradhna. I really appreciate that. As you mentioned, there's so much in your analysis that can certainly help feed into our discussions on the ongoing needs, to move the needle. Okay, great. Well, next it's my pleasure to introduce Reginald Spiller. So a consulting geoscientist and veteran of the petroleum industry, and he has been a founding member of the National Association of Black Geoscientists, NABG. So we will invite him now to share perspectives. So.
Well, thank you, Lisa. It's a pleasure to be here to see so many faces, some of which I recognize. My job is to really tell you a little bit about the NABG. This isn't a old organization. It's been probably the oldest African-American focused geoscience organization in the US. When I became a member of this thing, my hair was black, I had a big mustache, I had a big afro, 40 years ago. And we've been a part of that organization for a long time. It's composed of individuals really from government, industry, and from academia. It really cross-cuts industry and these career paths phenomenally. Let me share my screen and give you probably the best way to tell you about the NABG. And here's the NABG. I want to share my screen here. Here we go. This is probably the best way for me to really share with you the NABG. Look at this picture. Look at the people there. These are pictures of students and professionals that have come together every year for 40 years for technical conference. And it's been in Washington, it's been in New Orleans, it's been up at the University of Arkansas, it's been in San Francisco, but nowhere in America will you find this many people of color coming together for some geoscience event. It's a very, very unique group of people. You know, it's an organization that started from a handful of people, I think about 20 of us. And now we're probably in the thousands where we have touched people here in the US and we've gone international. It's an organization that has always inspired diversity, and the main element of this organization is to empower others. It's more than a community. When we get together every year, it's like a family reunion. It's a reunion of several generations of geoscientists. There's old folks, like myself, young people like Lisa White, and then it's mainly students that have been cross-cut the career spectrums. It's done by and supported by individuals who have spent a lifetime of promoting the earth and engineering sciences to people of color and creating legacy. Just look at the people, look at these individuals, and many of these people are actually here with us today. Some are not, but if you may know them, but if you don't know them, you should get to know some of these individuals. I've got pictures of some of them. People like Ike Crumley. That's my phone ringing. Hold on, let me turn that off. People like Ike Crumley, who's probably graduated more African-American geoscientists than anybody from Fort Valley State. Lisa White, of course, you all know Lisa. Mike Carroll, who's actually going to join us in one of the breakout sessions. Sherilyn Williams Stroud, a PhD structural geologist. Steve Boss from the University of Arkansas. And then Rufus Catchings. Rufus, I think, is actually going to join with us as well. These are people who've been involved with us every year. But there have been people from AGU that come every year, like Panodi Archer and Eleanor Snow from the USGS. So, NABG has been an organization that has opened its doors for scholarships. You want to come and pick yourself up a little scholarship, that's the place to do it. But it's mainly a place to get mentorships. I can't tell you how many students have called me and said, Reg, what do you think I do? I'm thinking about doing this, I'm thinking about doing that. It's a great place to get mentorship. It's been one of the best places for internships. You looking for an internship? Are you looking for a place for a permanent career opportunity? Or you're thinking about going to graduate school? It's a place to come give a presentation and someone says, hey, I want you at my institution. Or I want you at my university or at my company. It's a great group to partner with. AGU's been a longtime partner, GSA, AAPG, the National Science Foundation. Wow. NSF has been an incredible partner that supplies much of the capital to bring students to the organization. And then the key institutions if I really think about those institutions over time, over 40 years, there's sort of a handful. It's, Penn State University, University of Arkansas, Oklahoma State University, University of Texas, Fort Valley. These are institutions that have been there with us for a long time, but all the universities are typically represented. So in closing, as I kind of reflect over the years that I've been within ABG, it has been long committed to advancing the progress of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'll tell you, I'm really proud to still be a part of NABG. So thanks for listening. I'm looking forward to our session in our breakout room later on. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Reg. Well, we certainly know the power of professional organizations, especially ones centered around affinity groups that place a priority on networking, support for students, and support for professionals who may be isolated at their institutions. And we wanted to use our forum today to not only highlight, a 40-plus-year-old organization, but a brand new one that formed in this past year. And so I'm really excited that members of the AAPI&G community are with us. And Christine Chen from the Lawrence Livermore National Lab and one of the co-leaders of AAPI&G will share her screen now.
Yes, did that work? Hopefully you can see that slide. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for nodding in your video cams. All right, thank you so much, AGU and the D&I committee for inviting APIG, that's how we're gonna pronounce our acronym, to speak at this workshop today. Elisa's already introduced me, but I'll just say it again. My name is Christine, and I'm a postdoc at Lawrence Livermore National Lab. And I'm also here today, I'm here as just one of 3 co-founders of this new group. I'm also joined by several other members of APIG, including my fellow co-founders, Daniel Ibarra, Kim Lau, and also 2 members of our steering committee, Luan Haywood and Jimin Reem, who are co-facilitating the breakout rooms happening later in the session. So the creation of our group has been years in the making, but we truly owe ourselves to the leadership behind Shut Down STEM, to strike for Black Lives, as well as the 2 calls for action within geoscience, the No Time for Silence petition, the change.org petition last summer, led by many individuals who are currently in this room. Our founding principles and mission are grounded in knowing that our experience of violence, discrimination, and bias in the AAPI community, that is all a part of the broader context of racism, white supremacy, and settler colonialism. And as we work to address AAPI-specific issues, we are going to do our best and do so in solidarity with Black, Indigenous, Latinx, and other marginalized communities, following in the footsteps of other AAPI civil rights leaders that came before us and made everything that we're trying to do possible for us. So Dan, Kim, and I, we had a soft launch of this group during AGU last December. And during this meeting, approximately, I think 70 individuals came, and we essentially said, hey, everybody, we want to start this group. We think it's time. Here is our vision. But we are only 3 people, and we have never done this before, and we're frankly a little scared. Does anybody want to help us? And amazingly, 20 other students and early career researchers were maybe hoodwinked into joining us on this undertaking. And in the months since, this group, whose beautiful faces I'm featuring on the left of this slide, have done some incredible things. The least of which being, for instance, is our incredible logo. Notice how the different quadrants spell AAPI and obviously have an earth science flair to them. Credit for this logo goes to the wonderfully talented Caroline Zhuang. So hats off to her. And furthermore, that's the least of the cool things that have been done. The steering committee has planned an incredible series of events in celebration of our launch, as well as in celebration of Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, which is this month, May. These events are open to everyone in the Geosciences community, and they're intended to be educational and informative, accessible to both AAPIs as well as allies who are interested in learning more. So this Saturday, we're hosting a movie screening about the model minority myth with one of the filmmakers. And then next week, we're having a community discussion about the model minority myth. And then we have 2 fantastic panel discussions that I am super jazzed about, featuring a star-studded lineup, including Rosie Anolani Alagado, Tripti Bhattacharya, Gabriel Philip Santos, Radha Tripathi, Bala Chadari, George Matsumoto, and Sora Kim. Again, we encourage all of you to attend any of these events. The links, I think, are being posted in the chat by other steering committee members right now so that you can find out more information and the actual dates of when these are happening. And if you all could help us spread the word about our organization by sharing our website or following us on Twitter and Instagram, we would be grateful, because we really just want to make sure we are reaching the people who really need this kind of community now more than ever. I now just want to take just a moment to specifically talk to the other AAPIs who happen to be here in this workshop. We, the organizers, also want to recognize and embrace the huge range of differing experiences that are encompassed by the AAPI umbrella. Each group faces different challenges. These examples barely scratch the surface of all the examples that I could list, from anti-Asian racism and hate crimes rising in the US, what we're going to be talking about soon in the breakout rooms, to the harmful persistence of the model minority myth, to the fight for land rights, sovereignty, and self-determination for Native Hawaiians. And with all of this diversity just amongst ourselves, one might ask, why does the AAPI category even exist? It can be really frustrating to see this huge range of experiences lumped together as a monolith, especially in demographic data. And to this, I just want to remind ourselves that there is power in numbers. The term Asian American was born in the 1960s in solidarity with the Black Power movement and in recognition that there are more things that unify than divide us. And then in the 1980s, Pacific Islanders were added to this designation in the US Census in a move to allocate and advocate for more funding and resources to the communities that needed it. And right now, there's one community in particular that really needs us. To those who are impacted by the humanitarian crisis happening in India right now, I want to say that I'm deeply sorry that this is happening. There are really no words that suffice. And it just doesn't seem fair that parts of the world are continuing on as usual while there's just so much pain happening in India right now. So if you are impacted and you need community in these times, just know that APIG is here to support you. And links are probably in the chat for how to find us. And we'd love to see you in our breakout room later. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Christine. Just so valued the historical context that you shared and the reminders for why it's so important to support community. And very much looking forward to all the programming that you have scheduled this month for Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. And I'm sure things will continue as the group gains lots of speed, which you have already. So congratulations to the members of APEG for such a great start. Okay, next we're going to go to, is Brittany with us for Shutdown STEM? I know she was running a little late. If not, I'll go on to Vernon. So Billy, do you know?
I don't see Brittany.
Okay. Well, next it's my pleasure to introduce Vernon Morris from Arizona State University. He continues to inspire many of us to act and lead. And in the No Time for Silence petition, that was an important part of mobilizing efforts in the Geosciences last year. We're certainly wanting to be sure that folks know this is not a time to relax. I know we're all tired, but in many ways we feel like we're just getting started. So we'll invite Vernon now to share some insights.
Sorry, it took me a while to get unmute. Good afternoon, everyone, I believe, or a good day if it's not afternoon in your time zone. Thanks, Lisa, and to the organizers of this. I think this is one of the successes to me for this year when I look back at the many calls that came out, and No Time for Silence being one of the ones that was inspired by so much public violence in the street. That there was a collective effort across the sciences, across the nation really, to speak out against the atrocity. And so, we are a small group, really. It's 10 folks, and I think a number of the folks are here on the call. We're inspired by something similar to what Christine was just talking about. You're kind of like a zombie going about your life, and it seems like the world is falling apart around you, and that no one is reacting to it, and that you are complicit in this madness by just being the scientist, which is what the demands on you are. I got to go teach my class. I got to go to my class. I got to get this research done. I got to run this code. I got to. And for me, seeing people literally chased and shot down in the street who look like me, who ran the same paths I run, I came to a point where I couldn't continue acting like it didn't matter to me, and that was the way I needed to be a scientist. That's the way I need to legitimize myself in the science field. I've got to look at that as, that's not me, and that's not my experience, when I know, in fact, it is my experience, actually. And fortunately, I had a community of friends and colleagues who listened to me at that time. And we wanted to put out a call that spoke more broadly than how an individual should respond to another individual. Because yes, we should all be good people. All of us being good people is not going to solve racism. It will make it better in certain instances, but it will also recreate the madness of going about your business when the world is crazy around you. And so we sought to put together a call that I hope shook people out of that slumber and said, look, the systems are actually wrong, and the systems actually need to change. There has to be transformative action beyond the individual in the structures that enable and support science, from the professional societies to the federal science mission agencies, to the boards and committees that dictate the science that we do and how we do that science, to the academy, certainly, where many of us live and try to thrive, despite the toxicity of the environment that we work in. Private sector, non-governmental organizations, we're all complicit if we go about our business doing the things the same way we've been doing them. And so the words aren't quite enough. And so we tried to make demands and provoke action by singling entities out. Look, you could do things this way, and if you did, it would be better. Structurally, change the policy this way. And so I think many voices signed on to those. What we tried to do over the course of this year is, because there was heightened visibility, because I think people were more positioned to listen. I think the agitation and the threat of violence, to be frank with you, in the street was enough that people said, at least I've got to give audience. And when the door is cracked, you know, speaking frankly, you bust through. You don't wait, you hit the gap. And so we try to get to leadership and be direct and frank about what we thought would be changes. And I think there have been some successes, but this is a long fight. You know, lesson learned is that this is part of a struggle that's started 500 years ago or more on this land. And it's a good chance it goes 500 more years, but it'll go 1,000 if we don't do something now. And so I could talk, I'm inspired by I think it's called early career now. You can't say young, because if I say young, then that means I'm old, and I don't want to do that to myself. I think Reginald was very kind about that. But I think the opportunity for intergenerational alliances that span across these really energetic organizations, AAPI, IG, APIG, you know, big up APIG. I love what I see there. You know, I think there's ways that change could actually be made if we build upon our strengths in a symbiotic and synergistic way to really keep pressure on. Because each of us have these unique leverage points that need to be pushed on, need to be pivoted on, actually, so that we can get some transformative change, not to get on a committee. There's always, you know, formations of committee by obstruction in the academy. Let's form a working group to look at, all right, let's form a task force to look at, and there's no resources and the recommendations go somewhere. And, you know, I think there should be committees. But what we have to look at is, what is the end game that we're trying to enact, that we're trying to make happen, and keeping our eyes on that prize. And I think part of it is speaking frankly enough to say, look, there's one narrative that says, hey, we'll all be better off after this is done. And that's not true. The people who are benefiting from the current power hierarchy are not going to be better off. And that's where most of the decision makers are. And it's not going to be better off for them. We need to say, it's not going to be better off for you. It's going to be better off for the collective, but you individually, you're going to lose. And you should lose, because the structure is wrong. And so I think, you know, what my 5 is done. What I'm excited about is the fact that we get to have these conversations. You know, I don't believe, short of the pandemic, short of the crisis that we're actually going through publicly, that we would have these faces, these voices in conversation the way we're in conversation right now. That is the difference. That is the biggest win. And the challenge is keeping this momentum going forward, where we can continue to support all the students, young faculty, young career folks that are here, but also bring back all the disenfranchised, disaffected students, disaffected colleagues who've been forced out of the field, who've been forced out of their love for science, for geoscience, right? And there's a lot, and we all know them, actually. So I thank you a lot for this. It's rewarding. I've been at this a while, but the rewarding part is just seeing that the next generation is stronger, that the next generation has got this energy and this, we're going to get this done like now attitude. That is.
Most definitely. Thank you. And yeah, if we can only bring back, re-inspire individuals that we've lost along the way, that would make the time and effort we're spending all the more worth it. And we all know of some great individuals that just got so discouraged along the way and there weren't the right kinds of resources and sort of glue to keep them together. So, okay. Well, I believe that's the end of our presenters.
Lisa, Brittany is here now, I believe.
Wait, okay. Hi, Brittany, welcome. So everyone, I'm pleased
Thank
to,
you.
okay, from Shutdown STEM, the important movement last year, it's Brittany Kamai, and we look forward to your remarks.
Awesome. First off, thank you for having me in your space. I just had some dental work, so my face is a little numb. So I appreciate you all being patient with me on this. So I want to say thank you for inviting me into this incredible program. I've seen your work get shared through many different channels. So all of you who are showing up and continuing to do the work, like, thank you for keeping it up, right? And so I apologize for being late and not getting to listen to all your beautiful voices. So I will jump in, and sorry for redundancy, and I'm happy to talk more about this. Last year, we activated the global scientific community in a way we had yet to ever see. And this is part of the Shutdown STEM. Initially, it was intended to be a day of action in connection with Strike for Black Lives. And so I want to make something incredibly clear, is that we are all leaders leading with leaders. So it was an effective movement because we were co-leading the entire shaping of what needed to happen. And so what was designed in there was education, action, and healing. And I think too often we're not paying attention to the work that's necessary to heal from responding to these painful things that happen on the streets, through walking onto campus, within our spaces. And so I wanted to bring that up as highlighting that the importance of that work too. So building the emotional capacity around there. So when I was prompted with this question of thinking about this year in reflection, the changes that have happened, this is actually an awesome thing, is that there's so many I couldn't keep track of it, right? And that is a unique era that we're living in, is that when we called to action the collective community, it activated so many of us to say, yes, I can do something in my space, right? And so some of the bigger changes that I've seen happen is within our funding agencies. So at NASA, within the Science Mission Directorate, for the last 6 to 8 months or so, they had an anti-racist coalition to come up with very specific, tangible ways in which they're going to eradicate racism from NASA, right? And so that's going to start trickling into the proposals. There's already a pilot of ensuring that we are in the funding process, like saying, okay, hi, we're going to pay attention to these things as reviewers, and then hopefully affecting the funding pipeline, right? And so oftentimes people are not changing because they're still just getting money to do whatever they want to do, right? NSF, DOE is also paying attention to how NASA is changing. They're also changing as well, and trying to figure out the funding agency level and how that's going to materialize. Professional societies, so I'm a physicist, so my professional society is American Physical Society. And I have to say that, like, it's just the newsletter over the last year has like blown my mind in terms of what it actually is existing in there. So you're actually seeing people of color, you're seeing transformations of an announcement that happened last fall saying that our professional society is going to consider police conduct in the cities when choosing a site for conferences, right? And so just thinking about the economic impact we have on each city that we go to brings in some of our conferences bring in $10 million to host for us to nerd out about our science, right? And we're saying to that city that we're okay with the way that you're doing things, you know? And so like those kinds of actions within APS, even seeing their, they oversee all of our physical review journals, adding in, well, this isn't related to race, it's related to an awakening of saying that, yes, we can change. to include pronouns within your submission as a corresponding author, so that we're engaging in a way that's responsive to the gender, not just making it up depending on what we want. So I think too, institutionally at Caltech, it's you've, I kind of think I went to in a completely different institution, like the kinds of emails that we get at the institutional level saying that we're showing up for different communities, having very like frank conversations about how the things that you think you're seeing over there are actually happening in our gorgeous little Pasadena, right? Like there are, this is not an over there kind of a problem. So that each division, which is kind of like schools within different universities, like the School of Arts and Sciences, for example, each of the divisions have worked towards creating the institutional changes needed within the division. So looking at taking demographic information and finding you have no people of color in your field, like, you know, starting there really, and then having like actual plans, right, of saying we're going to hire people in this way, we're going to continue this conversation, we're going to be looking at it very strategically. Even on the jobs for this year, I saw a job from Stanford where they were specifically hiring people who were studying the impact of race in STEM, right? And so it's like, and you follow the line back and it's like June 10, 2020. So it's like, cool, you know. So there, and the other organization I wanted to also talk about is the International Science Council. So they oversee the global community of scientists. You might have the International Geosciences. I don't really know. We have the International Physicists and International Astronomy Union, but they're like the collective over that. So they've been really leading the conversation of what is this, how is racism showing up in science at the global scale, right? And how can they continue the momentum, and having really hard conversations when certain institutions don't, like, they put on a statement, but then when something comes into their plate, they react in fear. And they've had really difficult conversations to ensure that we are growing together. So yeah, I think too, seeing very tangible things coming from like nature, for example, saying like in our publishing front, these are the exact things that we're going to do. We're going to hire these folks, we're going to look through this lens, and we're going to continue this training and that type of thing. So that's my very tiny view of what's happening. There's so many other things that are transforming, and really we're getting to have conversations that we could not really have, right? Like there was conversations a little over here, a little over here, but now it's like we're all in this collective, like we're on each other's team. Like I'm hanging out with you geoscientists, like this is amazing. So thank you for inviting me into this space. Thank you for my patience of being late from my dentist, but you know, we all have to take care of ourselves. So I hope you take that as a lesson too. So thank you again.
Thank you, Brittany. And yes, we do all have to take care of ourselves, and we're all family too. So we're glad that you could share this space with us, and welcome all disciplines, of course. And I want to mention to the group that there are members of other communities with us, and that's why we're very much committed during the breakouts to give different communities of color and identity opportunities to share strategies. And the Indigenous Geoscience community is with us, as well as members of the Latino, Latina, Latinx community. And so Billy or Brielle, if we could go to the next slide. Let's see. Brittany, if you'll stop, or no, you're not sharing your screen anymore. Okay, here we go. So next we're going to transition to the breakout rooms. And so you will have a facilitator in each room. And the next slide, I believe, shows the question. So we will be using Jamboard style. When you get to the breakout room, you'll be given access to a link to a Google Jamboard. And so it's a great space for posting responses to these questions, to other ideas and topics that come up. And so you will at various times during our 2 breakout sessions have opportunities to address these questions. And we wanted, as we formulated these questions, to show support for the newest members of our professional science groups community, as well as continue to talk about obstacles and various actions. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see the 10 breakout groups. And so, and Brielle, I may need you to talk me through this again, but it's self-selection for this first round. And so if you, well, Brielle, I'll just be quiet and let you explain so I don't mess it up. No.
Yeah, so you'll be able to select your room that you identify with. Once I open the rooms, you'll get a notification to join which room. And some of the names I had to shorten just due to character limits. So National Association of Black Geosciences is NABG, and then Asian American and Pacific Islanders in Geosciences is AAPI. And I think the others are, you'll be able to see the names fully. So I'm going to open them now and let me know if anyone has issues.
So an additional word of instruction, once you go to the breakout room, you will be in the first room for approximately 20 minutes. There will be a facilitator there to guide you through use of the Jamboards. After the first 20 minutes, you will come back into the main room. So the first session, you choose which room. Once you come back after the first 20 minutes, you will be randomly assigned to one of these 10 rooms. So, but the facilitators in each of the rooms will be the same. So if you're facilitating one of these rooms, you will go to the same room for each session. And if anyone has any problem, just come back to the main room, and between Brielle and Laura and myself, we'll get people situated. So.
Sounds great. And you'll give us a warning when it's a few minutes before the breakout rooms end, right? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, happy breaking, everybody. And we will see you soon. Any questions? We leave? Okay. We're going to breakouts.
Actually, Brielle, I just sent you a direct.
Are you in room? Yeah, I think you're.
Your time is way too
Stopped in mid-sentence. I want to hear what she was going to say.
I know, too short, and we were probably overly ambitious with 2 breakout rooms and 3 questions, but we did give ourselves 20 minutes for sharing feedback. And let's see, I'll just check with members of the the organizing committee and AGU. I think we can go room by room in the 20 minutes here. And if you'll select, if the facilitator will share a salient point or 2 in a minute or less, then yeah, we'll have time to hear from all the groups. So, okay, well, I was in the NABG group breakout. So that was breakout room number 1. So who would like to share from my group? And I think I know I was hopping around a little bit, but we do have notes on the Jamboard, right? So Mike or Reg, do you want to share a few points?
Yeah, right. Let me begin, and Mike, you can follow up. I took some notes. I can't walk and chew gum at the same time in the Jamboard, so please forgive me. One of the things that we sensed from the discussion was that when it really came to seeing effective change both in the student population as well as the professors and teachers, we're not really seeing the kind of diversity I think that you would hope to see. Now recognize we've only been a year into this, and we've shared that, you know, planting a seed so it bears fruit in 1 year may be very, very difficult. But the question is why hasn't that really happened? And I highlighted a couple things in my notes. Number one, there doesn't really seem to be a push from industry coming to the university saying, you know, do you have an African-American or a person of color? We're looking for that kind of person. We're not really seeing industry pushing to do that in a way that maybe we saw in the late 70s by industry, where everybody wanted to have, you know, not only African-Americans, but they wanted women. The big push for women in industry is in the late 70s, okay? We hear that there is some change being happening at government level. We heard from Rufus Catchings, talked about, looks like there's internships. So we see some, maybe governments moving a little bit quicker. It appears that these institutions are not coming to the universities because they're moving away from the career days. If you think about our profession, you know, the career days, geology is about getting connected to an individual. That's certainly the way I was connected to the earth and engineering sciences. But when you sort of remove yourself from that and you get on a, you know, let's get on a job board, swipe left, swipe right, it's very difficult to create some sort of relationship there.
So Reg, I'm watching the clock a little bit.
Okay.
Mike, did you want to add anything? If not, we're going to move on to the APEG group.
I'll add something really quick, okay?
Yep.
I think what turns out, or when Reg is talking about when the previous years when we may have been involved in an industry, or when individuals were involved in academics in the past, I think our communication message and our communication focus has to change going forward to some degree. And I also think that geography plays a large role in what we're doing, because when you look at where most of the African-American population exists, all along the East Coast, a little bit up in the Chicago and Illinois area, and a little bit on the West Coast, there's not really that big connectivity to some of the industry companies and some of the universities that we see in the economy. Okay, bottom line, okay, David was talking about hazards and issues. Basically, what I think I heard him saying is that there has to be some sort of created relevance to African-American students or underrepresented students so that they feel the need and desire to go into geoscience. And I think that has to be part of our focus and change, basically, when we're trying to come up with ideas about enhancing involvement of students.
Yeah. Mike mentioned the value of the NABG and how the NABG serves as a conduit for students in industry and government.
Well, Lisa we may not have time, I guess.
Yeah, in fact, I'm probably going to modify my initial statement of how we'd close out, and likely just call on the panelists to represent the affinity groups and share out. So Christine, will you go next?
Sure, I'm going to pass my baton just to my co-facilitator, Luan Haywood, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was really, something that I took away was it was really, really interesting to compare the responses for the questions, the question about supporting AAPI individuals and the question about supporting Black individuals, because from the question about AAPI, actions to support AAPI, it came out that most people responded that there was little to nothing done on the department level, and if there were statements or actions. They were done on the university level. I think that this kind of reflects the lack of kind of organizing infrastructure for AEPIs, often on the department level. It was, however, interesting that someone mentioned being at an institution in California where AAPI individuals comprise a larger percent of the population, and that looked a little bit different there. Conversely, with talking about actions to support Black geoscientists, URGE came out really frequently. A lot of people mentioned that, which I think highlights that URGE was a really great way to organize and incorporate kind of like structure to incorporate leadership. And especially people spoke about bridging the gap with senior faculty, since we know that oftentimes this work really falls really heavily onto early career individuals, individuals of color, people that are in precarious situations. And a lot of the obstacles people mentioned were basically calling on that frustration of trying to lead from the bottom and lead from a position where you're not empowered to actually make structural change in your organization.
Agree, and thank you so much, Luan, for sharing that. So I'll ask Aradhana to go next. If you could share some reflections and things captured in the breakouts.
Yeah, and Vernon, I don't know. Yeah, Vernon, do you want to say, share any reflections, because we were co-facilitating? I'm also happy to.
Go ahead.
Right.
I'm good. I'll...
All right. So I think one of the, well, there were a few challenges that I heard. They kind of centered around getting leadership and other faculty to see that the issues really are systemic, and that a whole system of interventions really are needed. What was, and without that, then working on taking the actual actions that are needed to plan and make systemic change can be overwhelming. It's kind of a few activists within a department. And so with that, what was also really exciting to hear about were cases where there was transformative leadership. There were, these cases where there might be, the first Black provost in the history of a university that was looking at ways to share and executing ways to share power, and implementing things like reporting what you do for your contributions to diversity, equity, and inclusion, all personnel actions, so that it's clear that it is everybody's work and they're going to be assessed on it. And they didn't ask for permission, they did it, because that is the moment that we're in, and that is a sign of what a courageous leader does. And it made me reflect on how those types of actions can also be taken even at a departmental level, by a chair, by a committee that then makes that recommendation to the chair. And so, yeah, to me, that there also were exciting stories of how there was a mix of both bottom up and top down approaches for engaging in strategic planning, and then even implementing initiatives that would be departmental or even university wide.
Great. Well, in thinking about what you shared, I'd actually like to call on Kathleen Johnson. You, of course, have been working at so many leveled initiatives at UC Irvine, and we want to make sure we hear from the Indigenous community as well, and some of the many efforts, not only that you've engaged in, but what were some things shared in your group. So or would you be okay, Kathleen, to share a few things?
Yeah, sure. I can briefly highlight. I was a bad facilitator for the Indigenous and Native breakout part, because there were 4 of us, and it was so great to have 4 of us, which that haven't seen each other in a while. So we did some catching up, but we did reflect a bit on a lot of the work that has been happening. Brittany and Wendy and Daryl and I, and I don't want to steal Wendy's thunder, but I'm really excited that her and Daryl both are founding members of the Indigenous Geoscience Network, which is just getting started. So I don't know if there's a minute to let them say anything about that, but that's, you know, another really very needed resource for us to sort of network with each other and support each other and build community in that way. In terms of other sort of anti-racism and DEI action that we've been taking, we all are in different institutions and different places and sort of involved in different levels. But just from my personal perspective, it's been really great to be involved and see some of these changes happening at UCI. There's a lot going on. But it's also, you know, I think frustrating at times, as we all know, partly because it is, you know, the people of color, the BIPOC folks are carrying still a heavier part of the workload for this. And, you know, Aradna's comment about it making it necessary for everybody in order to be promoted, in order to get tenure in faculty positions is something that we're working really hard on at UCI. But there's serious resistance. And so that's one of the bigger challenges, are some of these really big systemic changes. Can we give Wendy, is Wendy still here? I don't want to put her, or Daryl.
I was muted. Yeah, if Wendy or Daryl wants to say a word, and then it'd be great to hear from members, especially I think we have some student members of the SACNAS community, besides our native representatives. I think there were some students, those two. So
they might not be here anymore.
Oh, they might.
I don't want to steal, I don't want to, you know,
yeah,
steal the official launch, but something I'm really excited about.
Right. So Ron, I might ask you, because I lost track a little, but who do we have from the SACNAS Latinx community?
Yeah, so it looks like the facilitators we had were Ingrid Maradiaga and Katarina Matos. Are either of you here to report back?
Yeah, we're here. Sorry, we didn't officially represent SACNAS, and I thought there was someone actually here from SACNAS. So I didn't want to steal anyone's thunder.
It's okay. Katarina,
yeah, so there was 4 of us, and it was really nice to connect. We're all women, all Latinas, and you know, we shared a lot of the personal struggles we've had, especially around you know, facing the barriers of, I don't know how to politely put this, but you know, white men in the way who just don't see the value of this. And I think, you know, implementing this as policy, implementing, you know, having to constantly show the value of diversity and inclusion is really difficult, and it weighs a lot, especially when it comes, you know, down to 1 or 2 people. So those were some of the things we were talking about. We also talked about the lack of transparency from, you know, DEI committees or working groups, like Vernon was talking about. You know, the task is given to someone and it doesn't quite come back to, you know, fall on the department or the institution to sort of do something about it. So it gets a little bit lost in the weeds. So some of the other things we were talking about were just, you know, a lot of self-education and a lot of, you know, BIPOC individuals in general just having to educate. And that takes a lot of energy as well. So, you know, we're just learning how to hijack the system. We're teaching other people the value of diversity, and we're just learning how we can hijack the system so that we can make changes in the next year. But certainly the pandemic has been hard, and a lot of us were just surviving. So those were some of the things that we discussed in the Latinx, Hispanic, and Chicanos group.
Thank you, Katarina, and that's great. And I continue to just be inspired by all you do as well, as one of the organizers of this webinar. And well, we only have a couple of minutes left, and I think it's fitting that we hear from the student representatives that joined us today. And so we've got Hannah Carroll with us and Ray Spriggs, both at UCLA, and perhaps they can capture and share for us what were some conversations from students who joined us. as you facilitated that group. So either one wants to chime in.
So the student group didn't end up having anyone, and we joined other rooms.
Okay, no wonder yeah. Saw Ray. Okay, great. In ours.
I think there's also there was a postdoc group, another early career group.
So Benjamin Keesley, maybe we'll give you the last word.
Hannah was there too. She could have jumped
Yeah.
in. I'll say a lot of what's been shared so far are things that came up in our group as well. One of the things that I think was really important that we talked about is power and positionality as postdocs. One of the things that came up is that we recognize we can often be in precarious positions where we don't feel very powerful, but in some ways we do have more power than others. For example, students. And so coming up with strategies to support students, particularly AAPI and Black students, was one of the topics of conversation in the postdoc and early career group. And one of the really important strategies that was shared is supporting students not only in the advocacy and their efforts, but supporting them to do the science they came to academic spaces to do, and also helping support students to get out of toxic environments that are no longer sustaining to who they are or the kind of science that they want to do. And so making sure that we're there to provide students with resources that they need to continue to thrive in the space they already are, or to identify environments that will be more sustaining for them, like many of the environments that we heard shared about early on in this webinar and that we've heard about now. There are many burgeoning and well-established places where students of color can find additional community. And so making sure that those resources are well known was something that we thought we as postdocs could leverage our power to do. Thank you.
Great. Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone. And I want to acknowledge and say hello to Daryl Reno, who is part of the tandem, as was mentioned by Kathleen, that has started a new group for Indigenous members of the geoscience community. And we'll be sure to remind you of the resources that we have connected to this workshop series, from the recordings of previous workshops to this one as well. And I think it's important also, as Aradhana is reminding me, that we think about the importance of just pledging to prioritize, lead, get others to join. And after all, we know that many of us in this space are the ones who are generally doing a lot of the planning, but I think the ongoing opportunity to make personal commitments to action planning and inspiring others, most definitely to do the same. Okay, so yes, you see the links there from the Ethics and Equity Center. And I really want to thank members of the working group who helped organize this, and all the panelists, of course. And if there are no final remarks, any members of the organizing committee are free here to make remarks, but I think collectively we want to thank you. So really, really appreciate your time. We know what a commitment 2 hours is at this time of the year. So hands to all of you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you, Lisa, as well. And thank you to people working behind the scenes, to Brielle and Laura Lyons working behind the scenes to support us. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Great. So everyone have a good rest of your week, and we look forward to being in touch and seeing you in other spaces. So thank you again.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good seeing everybody. Hopefully in person soon.
I know. Well, hybrid meeting, HU and
GSA Portland in October. We'll be there.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah. It's looking like GSA will have a hybrid. So that's great.
Lisa, thank you so much.
Sure.
You're amazing with.
Okay. Yeah, I was doing some stuff on the fly though. I didn't have the best notes for today.
I'm grateful. So best moderator. You're just so calm. It's just so inspiring and professional. Like, it doesn't matter what anybody's saying, you'll be calm.
All right.
I didn't know Wendy left, Lisa. Sorry, I would have spoke up earlier, but I thought she was here, so I was like.
Oh, then I felt bad for putting you on the spot, so it's fine. Lisa put me in the spot, and then I put you on the spot.
I know, I know. So that's why we were going, on the fly.
And then I didn't have the website ready or nothing, so I was like, oh.
No. I just wanted to make sure, the indigenous voice was there too. So.
I know, they'll hear about it. They'll hear about it.
Yeah, because of course Wendy was on my tail. Why isn't there a speaker, from our community? I'm like, I know we have.
And Katarina, thank you for the clarification with respect to
I'm sorry I didn't catch up sooner. I feel so bad. I just left you hanging.
It was in one of the organizing committee meetings, and we were like, here are folks that will invite from these different orgs to participate in these rooms. And so I think Saknas was on one at some stage. And anyways, and I probably was the one who typed it in, so it's just stuck in my head.
Yeah. And Amy, I didn't say anything about a survey, but as people were leaving, I was like, was I supposed to say something about a survey or post a link? Because I couldn't remember if we had.
I feel like we sent it out last time. I don't know.
Yeah, Julie, there was one workshop series. Hi, Raquel.
Hello.
Yeah, one workshop I posted at the end, but other times I sent it out. We only had half the participants who signed up, but that's fine. We just send it to everybody and say, if you participated, please respond. Even if you didn't, they can say why, but.
Yeah.
All right. Well, congratulate us, y'all.
Yeah.
Congratulations, everyone. And hey, congratulations, Billy. I know so many people have already said it, but that's such fantastic news.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Billy. That's amazing.
Thank you. All right. See you guys. Appreciate it.
Billy, just drinks are in you at AGU.
Yeah, we'll celebrate in New Orleans. I'll see you there.
In person. You have to be there in person.
In New Orleans.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So excited by that prospect.
Next week, our DI meeting, and Benjamin will see you there too. Is it Monday? Our next
the following Monday, the 17th.
Oh, see?
So you got a week.
Got a week off, Lisa. Maybe.
Okay, I know. I need.
We have to have another organizing meeting sometime in there too. That's coming.
Oh,
I was not going to tell you about it until after.
Right.
there's
organizing. It happened.
Billy, we needed to find out from EGU, not EGU, we needed to find out from NSF if we could just put in a supplement into perhaps the existing AGU lending grant. So that's what I heard when I chatted with Brandon. And so I sent a note to Lisa Rohn because he's like, I think Lisa's handling it. So I sent a note to Lisa with UCC about a week ago after I talked to Brandon.
I probably just ignored it because I didn't want to see it.
Yeah, but I think it might be better because I'm not involved with that grant at all. But I tried to, I was trying to save time, and I was trying to make it so that Brandon wasn't brought into it. Just so So anyways, I'll forward it to you so it's at the top of your inbox.
All right.
But I think if we know it can be a supplement, then that at least clarifies for Amy and for all of us, what that would just be much less work, basically.
Okay. And I know Benjamin was having a discussion with some other people from AGU meetings. I'm not sure whether you've had those meetings yet, Benjamin, but it's going. Okay, so if that works out, if they're going to be involved in the planning and execution, then I think it makes sense for some of the administration to come through as well. We'll figure out where the money goes, though.
Yeah, I've CC'd Victoria and Heather, and they're working on the Chapman. We hope that the second national conference will be a Chapman conference sponsored by AGU, and we'll have some money to help AGU with the logistics through NSF.
Great.
And summer 2022 in Amherst or Washington, DC to be determined. but either way, it's going to be really fantastic.
Right.
Excellent.
On
Okay.
the 50th anniversary of that
Yeah.
first.
Excellent. Okay. All right.
Well, thanks everyone. Thanks Kathleen for being a good sport about it. I'll just
Yeah, no, of course. I would have prepared more had I known.
No, but our Bromry discussion today, every meeting I had certainly fed into, and Rhonda, yeah, because we've been in 3 meetings today together.
Lisa, you must just be like, shut up, Rhonda.
Girl,
we started our day together.
We did. And oh my God, I can't wait to go drink something,
We'll watch Rhonda's CNN video.
Oh, okay. Well, have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Okay.
Really
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.